In 1957, Hope dials a rotary phone in snowy Colorado. She explains she saw the phone number in her dreams. The mysterious numbers were carved directly into solid ice. Hope nervously asks the unknown person for their true identity. She hears painful, high-pitched static and quickly hangs up the phone. In 1982, Finney aggressively punches a bleeding boy on the ground. He only stops fighting when his sister Gwen yells at him. Gwen questions Finney as they walk away from the crowd. Finney defensively claims the other kid started the fight first. Gwen mentions his tough reputation after defeating a serial killer. A boy named Ernie approaches them in a blue car. He warmly invites Gwen to a music concert later tonight. Gwen smiles brightly and quickly agrees to the fun invitation. Finney cannot sleep, so he goes outside to smoke a joint. He imagines the masked grabber standing quietly by the dark bushes. Gwen walks outside wrapped in a green blanket to check on him. Finney refuses to discuss his trauma and sends her away. In a snowy dream, a boy named Felix arrives at Camp Alpine Lake. Later, the terrified boy runs through the forest while the grabber chases him. Felix falls down, and the killer slices his yellow jacket open. Dumped underwater, the bleeding boy scratches a letter W into the ice. Gwen suddenly wakes up gasping from the nightmare inside her blue-lit bedroom. She gets out of bed while a phone rings in the house. Gwen opens the front door and stares out into the foggy street. She thinks something strange is hiding near a tree across the yard. Finney touches her shoulder and snaps her out of the sleepwalking trance. Gwen tries to explain her bad dream, but Finney sends her to bed. The next day, Gwen studies supernatural books in the library. A passing girl leans close and calls her a witch. Ernie sits down and hands Gwen 2 concert tickets. He notices her books and brings up spooky topics. He shows her fortune-telling cards from his grandmother's shop. Ernie mentions how Gwen's dreams helped find a grabber victim. Gwen looks down at the table with clear discomfort. Ernie quickly reassures her that he likes weird things. After school, Finney leaves a local convenience store. A nearby payphone on a brick wall starts ringing. Finney stops and pulls off his headphones. He hesitates before picking up the heavy receiver. He tells the caller he cannot help them. Finney quickly hangs up and walks away. A dirty sticker on the phone reads out of order. At Camp Alpine Lake, boys cheerfully play in the deep snow. Later that night, a terrified boy runs through the dark forest. A dark figure violently attacks him during the heavy snowstorm. Some of his body parts are thrown into a roaring fireplace. The rest of his body sinks beneath the frozen lake. Under the thick ice, he scratches a letter B near a W. Suddenly, Gwen wakes up breathing heavily in her dark bedroom. She gets out of bed and walks outside completely barefoot. She slowly approaches a gruesome, bloody body resting in the yard. A distressed Gwen pedals her bicycle down the quiet street. She squeezes through a small window into a dirty cellar. Gwen answers a black rotary phone hanging on the wall. She speaks to a girl named Hope about her strange dreams. She looks very disturbed and slowly hangs up the black handset. She turns around and gasps at a man with a bloody head. The ghost quietly warns Gwen that she should not be there. Suddenly, the heavy cellar door creaks open from the floor above. Finney steps into the basement and slowly approaches his sister. Gwen frantically claims she was just talking to their mother. Finney grabs her shoulders and insists it was only a nightmare. They finally turn around and walk up the dark stairs together. The next day, Gwen places a camp pamphlet on the table. She suggests working as counselors to investigate the strange place. Finney firmly refuses to work at a religious winter camp. Their father walks into the room and overhears their conversation. He immediately recognizes Camp Alpine Lake from the printed pamphlets. He mentions his wife worked there before it closed in 1958. He grabs a green bottle and clearly dismisses Christian camps. Later, Gwen convinces Ernie to drive her to the camp. Finney packs a red duffel bag to protect his sister. Ernie drives his blue car straight into a heavy snowstorm. They pass a flashing ambulance on the dark, snowy road. The thick falling snow makes it impossible to see ahead. Finney tells Ernie to stop the car and steps outside. He runs in front to safely guide the moving vehicle. A horseback rider named Mustang spots them with a flashlight. She safely leads the trio toward the main camp entrance. At the snowy gate, they meet the camp manager, Armando. He says the regular campers will not arrive tomorrow morning. The local roads will remain unplowed until the storm stops. Gwen is assigned to the cold girl's room all alone. Finney and Ernie head straight into the empty boys' dorm. Nobody else showed up because of the severe winter blizzard. Gwen quickly falls asleep on her bunk and has another nightmare. Spike plays drums in a band before appearing trapped under ice. He scratches the letter H before his bloody face splits open. Gwen violently jolts awake and hears scraping under a neighboring bed. Outside, Finney smokes a cigarette and hears the distant payphone ringing. He walks toward the snowy booth, and the ringing abruptly stops. Finney turns to walk away, but the loud ringing instantly restarts. He answers the handset to say he cannot help anyone. He quickly hangs up, but the black phone loudly rings again. Finney tries leaving, but the ringing grows into an agonizing shriek. He tightly covers his ears and answers the ringing phone again. He hears static before the grabber eerily says hello to Finney. The terrified boy hangs up, but the glass booth door closes. Finney desperately kicks the jammed door multiple times in absolute panic. The phone rings again, so Finney furiously kicks the metal box. The black handset tumbles off its hook and dangles loosely. The grabber's voice claims that hell is not made of flames. He tells Finney that hell is actually made of solid ice. He states that absolutely nothing burns quite like the biting cold. Gwen looks under her bed and is horrified terrified to find Felix. She backs away until Cal grabs and severely burns her arm. A terrified Gwen retreats as the dead boys slowly step closer. She then sees Spike standing near the frosty room window. A dark figure appears and violently slams the window down. The falling broken glass slices Spike's face directly in half. Gwen screams loudly in terror as the phone booth door opens. Finney rushes back and frantically shakes Gwen awake in her bed. She cries uncontrollably and says she's going completely crazy. Finney hugs her tightly and tries his best to comfort her. After washing the burn mark, Gwen refuses to sleep alone. She joins Ernie in his bed, but still cannot rest. She quietly asks Jesus for protection from the terrible nightmares. Ernie overhears, and they begin to talk softly about religion. They easily bond over coming from very devout Catholic families. Gwen explains her mother also suffered from very strange dreams. Those dark visions eventually drove her poor mom completely crazy. They lean in closely and almost share a romantic kiss. Finney suddenly speaks from the bottom bunk to interrupt them. He rubs his tired eyes and tells them to sleep. Finney angrily pulls Gwen aside in the snowy morning. He scolds her for revealing their dark secrets to Ernie. Gwen aggressively pulls up her purple sleeve in response. She shows the boys deep red burn marks on her arm. These painful injuries prove her scary visions are real. Later, the teenagers eat breakfast inside a large mess hall. Armando strictly scolds Gwen for sleeping in the boys' cabin. He seriously doubts they want to become camp counselors. Gwen slides a green photo wallet across the wooden table. It shows a picture of a woman named Hope. Armando affectionately recognizes her as a former camp counselor. Gwen sadly reveals that Hope killed herself 7 years ago. A heartbroken Armando gently touches his chest in grief. He tells the teenagers to call their families from the office. Finney asks about using the wooden payphone outside. Armando replies that the payphone has been dead for a decade. After Armando leaves, Finney shares a very scary secret. He reveals the dead payphone actually rang last night. He claims he clearly heard the grabber's voice. Suddenly, a loud ringing echoes from the frozen lake outside. Finney quickly runs out into the heavy snow. He reaches the phone booth and answers the receiver. A scared boy's voice speaks through thick static. The mysterious boy complains about the freezing cold weather. He warns Finney they should not be at the camp. 3 bloody ghost boys slowly appear outside the glass booth. Finney cannot see the terrifying spirits surrounding him. Suddenly, the bloody boys start violently pounding on the glass. They scream loudly for help while hitting the transparent walls. A terrified Finney quickly hangs up the phone receiver. The ghosts vanish instantly into the cold winter air. A bearded man watches a severe blizzard warning on an old television. He quickly calls a friend on a wall phone for a snowplow favor. Meanwhile, Gwen and Ernie step into the wooden camp office. They ask Kenneth and Barbara for books about the camp's history. Kenneth steps forward and hands them a small paper brochure. Barbara then sharply scolds Gwen for sleeping in the boys' cabin. Gwen ignores the scolding and asks about murdered boys from the past. Barbara glares and says, "Good Christians do not discuss such things." Gwen gets angry and aggressively curses at the woman. Kenneth points at the door and orders the teenagers to leave. That night, Gwen dreams about the camp's dark past. She sees Hope Adler talking to unseen voices on the payphone. Gwen is suddenly standing alone in the snowy forest. She talks to a young ghost with a bloody face. Gwen runs as bright red feathers fall from the dark sky. She stares at a bloody jacket on the snowy ground. A heavy steel axe suddenly strikes a nearby tree stump. Thick, dark blood quickly pours out of the severed wood. Gwen wakes up with a start in her dark bunk. She spots a woman in a white nightgown by the door. Meanwhile, the outside payphone starts ringing loudly in the night. Finney hears it and quickly shakes Ernie awake. He tells his friend to check on Gwen immediately. Finney runs outside toward the ringing payphone in the snow. Gwen walks out of her cabin into the cold night. She spots a ghost boy and quietly follows him. She sees Finney and Ernie, but walks into the thick fog. Finney picks up the phone inside the cold glass booth. The grabber's chilling voice speaks through the heavy receiver. His terrifying ghost stands right outside the booth's clear glass. He wears his horned mask and smiles wickedly at Finney. He vows to hurt Finney for making him kill his brother. At the same time, Ernie frantically searches Gwen's dark cabin. He finds her bed empty and starts to panic. Ernie runs through the deep snow to the staff cabin. He bangs on the door and begs the adults for help. Felix leads Gwen into the dark mess hall, and she follows a light into the kitchen. The large ovens are open to reveal huge flames. Some metal objects fall, alerting the adults to her location. Suddenly, the grabber's ghost emerges from the shadows with an axe. He attacks Gwen, so she tries hard to defend herself. He uses a belt on her legs to make her fall. Gwen blocks the axe, so he tries choking her instead. The adults and Ernie then burst into the messy kitchen. They see Gwen struggling to breathe on the cold floor. However, they cannot see the terrifying grabber at all. Suddenly, her body is violently thrown against a metal shelf. Finney hears Barbara screaming, so he sprints to the cabin. Gwen is thrown onto a table and spun in the air. She is forcefully pushed toward the burning ovens. Ernie manages to grab her legs to stop her. When the adults try to help, objects fly off the shelves. Mustang dodges them and helps Ernie pull Gwen back. At that exact moment, Finney runs into the kitchen. The grabber lets go of Gwen and disappears into the shadows. Everyone gathers inside the chapel after Finney wakes Gwen up. Gwen sits wrapped in a blanket and describes her dreams. Armando rubs his beard and quickly recognizes her accurate descriptions. He admits that he never stopped looking for those kids. Armando grabs a framed photo to show the camp's final year. Hope stands among the counselors in the old group photograph. Finney points at a man and recognizes him as the grabber. Armando is completely shocked by this very dark, sudden discovery. He explains the man was a maintenance worker named Wild Bill Hickok. Bill wore a leather tool belt, just like a gunslinger. Gwen realizes the initials of Wild Bill Hickok are WBH. These perfectly match the scratched letters from her recent dream. She concludes this camp is where the grabber started killing. Armando mentions that weird things began happening 4 years ago. Finney points out that is exactly when he killed the grabber. His evil spirit was then free to return to this camp. Gwen theorizes the grabber draws power from his victim's fear. They urgently need to find the bodies to set them free. The police never searched the completely frozen lake back then, but Armando remembers that Bill had equipment for ice fishing. He could have easily cut holes into the thick ice. The group agrees to go search the lake at dawn. Armando checks photos of missing boys inside a thick Bible. A strange noise makes him spot a creepy snowman outside. His desk radio suddenly crackles with loud and heavy static. A chilling voice claims Armando made him kill his brother. Armando grabs the microphone and says he cannot keep the boys forever. The room goes completely dark and Armando clicks a flashlight. A loud thud makes him spin quickly toward the window. The grabber's face is formed by snow and dripping blood. The scary voice on the radio threatens to hurt him. Armando bravely insists they will definitely rescue the missing boys. He stubbornly calls the hidden man Bill one more time. The grabber angrily screams his real name is not Bill. Loud bangs shake the glass before the bloody face vanishes. The next morning, the group searches across the frozen lake. They scrape snow off the ice but find absolutely nothing. Later, Finney and Ernesto promise to watch Gwen sleep safely. They plan to wake her if a bad nightmare begins. Gwen falls asleep and dreams of a young, busy paperboy. He rides his bicycle while a dog runs beside him. A dark van parks silently, and the grabber holds balloons. This memory reveals his very first kidnapping in the town. Meanwhile, Hope gasps loudly and wakes up from her dream. She remembers the camp worker and quietly whispers Wild Bill. Back in the cabin, Gwen sleepwalks in her pink pajamas. Ernesto quickly grabs her and gently guides her to bed. The dream continues. Gwen watches Hope get out of bed. Hope walks outside in her pajamas. Gwen follows her to a parked black van. Hope peeks through a basement window. She sees a tied-up boy. Hope quickly turns to run. The young grabber suddenly catches her. He forces her into his van. Ghost grabber opens the back doors. He makes Gwen enter the vehicle too. He claims he brought her as a kindness. He wants her to know the truth before the end. The van stops at Gwen's home. Gwen sees her mother hanging inside the garage. She did not take her own life. The grabber murdered her and staged it. Gwen cries softly. Terrence finds his wife and breaks down. The grabber pulls out a sharp axe. Gwen instantly runs. She takes the stairs into the cellar. The black phone rings. Gwen answers it. Felix tells her to hide. Gwen rushes into a bathroom. She crawls through a hole. She finds a door and pounds on it. It will not open. The grabber swings his axe. The blade slashes Gwen's arm. She bleeds in the real world. Ernie spots the blood. He warns the boys, but they cannot wake her up. Gwen finally opens the door. She finds Felix waiting. He shuts a door behind her. Gwen runs out to the frozen lake. She hears her friends yelling her name to wake her up. Armando searches the frozen lake and spots Felix's body underwater. He grabs a tool and quickly starts hacking the ice. Meanwhile, a brightly lit phone booth suddenly appears near Gwen. The phone rings, so she quickly answers the black receiver. The grabber tells her he must defend his personal power. The masked grabber sprints toward Armando and aggressively chops the ice. Gwen wants to help, but the booth door is stuck. The broken ice suddenly collapses and Armando falls into freezing water. Armando tries climbing out, but the grabber's boot pushes him down. Gwen aggressively punches the stuck booth door in her dream. Her real body mimics this and punches Finney in the face. The grabber violently shatters the glass with his horned mask. He grabs the black phone cord and forcefully chokes Gwen. Then he violently throws her body backward into the air. In the bedroom, Gwen levitates and spins horizontally like a top. Blood spills everywhere as the panicked boys pull her down. They manage to pin her thrashing body to the floor. A girl throws a bowl of cold water on Gwen's face. The sudden splash completely fails to wake Gwen up. Gwen steps forward and declares her power. She fiercely headbutts the masked killer. Then she wakes up gasping on the floor. The group quickly rushes to the dark lake. They drag Armando from the freezing water just in time. Shivering, he confirms he found Felix. Everyone agrees to search for the others at dawn. Near the cabins, a snowplow truck suddenly arrives. Terrence steps out, surprising his kids. Finney wants to leave immediately, but Gwen stubbornly refuses. A heated argument breaks out in the snow. Gwen angrily calls out her family for ignoring their trauma. She finally reveals that the grabber actually murdered her mother. This shocking truth convinces the men to stay. The next day, the group searches the frozen lake. They pull up a rusty barrel, but find no missing boys. Suddenly, Gwen falls asleep, and the grabber appears skating across the lake. Gwen tries to run, but falls backward into the large hole. This icy plunge causes her real body to get wet. The grabber hits Kenneth with an axe and drags him away. This exact brutal attack happens in the real world too. Kenneth's sliding body hits Barbara and violently knocks her down. Barbara completely smashes her face on the hard frozen surface. The grabber continues to slash them with his sharp axe. Meanwhile, Gwen clearly sees some rusty barrels sinking deep underwater. She kicks them open and finds the last two bodies inside. The grabber furiously hits the ice around the hole to break it. A heavy rescue cable spool suddenly falls into the freezing water. The grabber then jumps to put a belt around Finney's neck. He forces the boy down and starts aggressively choking him. Terrence jumps into the water and helps Gwen lift the barrels. On the ice, Finney fights back and pushes the grabber off. Gwen recites a prayer on the foggy ice. A skeletal hand breaks out and grabs his ankle. The horned monster trips and slams down hard. Three bloody ghost boys appear to block his path. Gwen swings an axe right into his head. She rips his mask off his deformed face. The exposed grabber screams in absolute panic. Finney sneaks up to grab the killer from behind. He brutally smashes the man's face into the ice. Gwen chops his trapped leg to free him. The bleeding grabber tumbles into the dark lake. The ghost boys push him down until he drowns. Gwen wakes up and softly kisses Ernie. Later, Armando calls the grieving families about the bodies. A snowy payphone starts ringing outside in the storm. Gwen answers and happily hears her mother's voice. Her mom praises her for saving the kids. She promises the dreams are not a curse. She says she loves them and hangs up. Gwen walks over and hugs Finney tightly. She whispers their mother's message to him. The siblings climb into their dad's truck and leave. Thanks for watching.